Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're unpacking a finding that should really make anyone who relies on the web sit up straight. We are talking about the moment that, well, the digital information scale totally tipped.
Okay.
Ready for the headline. As of November 2024, the sheer quantity of AI-generated articles published on the web, it actually surpassed the quantity of human-written ones.
Wow. It's not just a statistic, is it? It's like a milestone, marks the arrival of this synthetic content environment.
Definitely.
And for you, the learner, our mission today is really understanding the new rules of this whole ecosystem.
Right. Why should you care?
Well, because this change, it fundamentally alters how content gets made, how visible it is, and, what happens when sheer volume starts replacing value, even if you don't realize it's happening.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We've gone deep into the study behind this finding, and we need to look at, well, three things mainly.
Okay.
The speed of the shift, how they actually measured it, the methodology, and this massive kind of surprising paradox that came out of the boom.
Yeah, less a surge, more like a content explosion, really.
Absolutely. When you look at the timeline, the growth driver,
Yeah.
the ignition point is just unmistakable.
Right.
This massive, almost vertical growth in AI articles, it happened right around the same time as the launch of ChatGPT, November 2022.
It basically gave every, let's say, content farm an instant printing press.
Yeah.
Super accessible.
Exactly.
And the speed of adoption after that launch, that's what's truly, well, astonishing. We're not talking gradual uptake here. The study showed that after only 12 months,
Just a year.
just 1 year after ChatGPT launched, AI-generated articles already accounted for like a staggering 39% of all articles published online.
39%, wow.
Yeah, to go from basically 0 to nearly 2/5 of all content in just 12 months.
Oh,
That's pretty much unprecedented in publishing history.
So, okay, why the stampede? Why were companies so eager, to replace human writers?
Well,
The motivation seems purely economic, right? It's kind of a brutal calculation.
it really is. You go from paying a skilled writer, maybe upwards of $200, $300 for a detailed, high-quality article, 1,000 words or so.
Yeah, standard rate.
Down to spending maybe, I don't know, $3 on an API call and getting multiple articles out pretty much ready to publish in an hour.
The ROI is just astronomical. At least it looks that way initially.
Exactly. And that rationale gets reinforced because, frankly, the quality has improved so quickly.
Right, that's a key point.
Yeah, the sources mentioned an MIT study suggesting that in many cases, AI content is now seen as good as, maybe even better than, human stuff, especially for like repetitive or really fact-heavy topics. And critically, other studies like one from Originality AI, they reinforce that, well, the average person often can't reliably tell the difference anyway.
Okay, so if the quality seems acceptable and the cost is basically pennies, the economic drive to automate is just overwhelming. But, this is the deep dive. We know you want to know how the researchers actually managed to quantify this seismic shift. How do you even measure the content of the entire internet?
Right.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, making a claim like that about the whole web, you need a serious foundation.
Definitely.
So the study, it built its data set using Common Crawl. Now, think of Common Crawl as one of the single biggest photographic archives of the internet.
Okay.
It's publicly available, and it's actually a key data set often used to, train the large language models themselves.
So they were basically studying the raw library materials that the LLMs kind of grew up on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Studying the LLM's own information heritage, you could say. From this huge archive, they needed a representative sample. So they randomly picked 65,000 URLs.
65,000?
Yeah, but they had to filter them. Specific, pretty strict criteria to make sure they were comparing apples to apples,
Okay, what kind of filters?
Well, the articles had to be in English. They needed to be at least 100 words long.
Makes sense.
And they had to have what's called an article schema markup.
Okay, what's that for people not familiar?
Right, think of it like a little digital label. It tells search engines, like Google, hey, this page is a proper, defined, authored article.
Ah, okay, so it weeds out forum posts or just basic landing pages.
Exactly. They wanted actual articles. Once they had this defined sample, the ultimate challenge was detection.
Right, which is, as we know, a really hotly debated topic.
Yeah.
Can you even detect AI reliably?
Many people argue you can't. The study used Surfer's AI detector, but crucially, they needed a clear defensible line for classification.
And what was that line? Because it can't be just pure binary, right? 100% human or 100% AI, especially if people are doing light edits.
That's right. It's almost never that clean, so they used a 50% threshold.
50%.
Yeah. They broke each article into chunks, 500 words each. And if the algorithm predicted that more than over 50% of the total content was AI generated,
Then the whole thing gets tagged AI.
the entire article was classified as synthetic.
Yeah.
And that 50% mark is really important. It accounts for articles that might have had some human blending, maybe light editing.
But the core was still AI.
But the fundamental source was still generative AI.
Exactly. Okay, but the confidence in these results, it really hinges on the accuracy checks they did, right? On that detection algorithm.
Absolutely crucial.
Let's talk about the false positive rate first. So how often does the system mistakenly yell AI when it was actually just a human writer?
Right, you need to know the error rate. To test this, they needed a baseline of definitely human content. Makes sense.
Yeah, like a control group.
Exactly. So they tested articles published before ChatGPT even launched, specifically Jan 2020 to Nov 2022.
Okay, pre-AI boom.
Right. This clearly human-written content resulted in a 4.2% false positive rate.
4.2%. So roughly 4 times out of 100, it wrongly flagged human work as AI.
Yep. That's the margin of error you have to keep in mind for the human side.
Okay. Then on the flip side, the false negative rate. How often does the system let a machine-written article slip through, mistakenly labeling it as human? This is the big worry for a lot of researchers.
It is. They tested this on a massive data set, 6,009 articles generated specifically by OpenAI's top model, GPT-4o, across lots of different topics.
Okay, using the latest and greatest AI.
Right. And the detector. It correctly classified a phenomenal 99.4% of those articles as AI.
99.4. That's
really high.
It's incredibly high, which means a tiny 0.6% false negative rate, at least for that specific, very modern model.
So it barely missed any of the pure GPT-4o stuff they made themselves.
Pretty much, which gives them, pretty high confidence in measuring that pure AI output.
Okay, that methodology sounds incredibly rigorous, which makes the next finding, this massive twist in the story, even more compelling.
Right.
Because despite all that speed, despite the clear economic push, despite the huge volume, the growth trend it stopped. It absolutely did. Flatlined. The proportion of AI-generated articles, it's remained relatively stable over the last 12 months, basically plateauing since May 2024.
Wow.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, this plateau is incredibly revealing, right?
How so?
Well, if the content is so cheap and the quality is supposedly good enough, why did the floodgates suddenly kind of slow down?
Yeah, good question. You'd expect it to just keep climbing.
Unless
the creators, the content farm operators, they're rational actors, right?
Yeah.
If the whole incentive is ROI.
Then the ROI must have dropped, maybe even to zero. And the researchers, they hypothesized that the practitioners just realized something important. These purely AI-generated articles, they do not perform well in search.
They don't show up on Google.
Precisely. If you're pumping out hundreds of articles for pennies, but none of them ever get seen, none hit page 1.
The whole operation is kind of pointless.
Exactly. The content might be grammatically okay, maybe factually accurate sometimes, but it likely lacks that depth or unique authority, or maybe just the non-repetitive phrasing that search engines like Google prioritize.
Okay, this leads us straight into the visibility paradox, which honestly, for me, this is the most profound takeaway here. The web is quantitatively dominated by AI articles. We've established that pretty clearly.
Yeah, by volume.
But then, in a separate related study, the authors show that these same articles, largely jest, do not appear in search results. Not from Google, not even from generative AI systems like ChatGPT when they summarize the web.
So, okay, what does this all mean? It's a bit of a, slightly dystopian vision, isn't it?
A little bit.
You have this tremendous volume of potentially low-value, largely invisible content just polluting the vast web archive.
Like digital landfill.
Kind of, but the flip side is search engines seem to be acting as a pretty powerful filter, meaning that while the raw internet is flooded,
The part we actually see and interact with daily?
is relatively cleaner, the quantity is definitely there, but the impact measured by, real user views, it's nowhere near proportional to the volume.
It's actually a massive relief, I guess, for those of us who rely on search quality.
It is.
But it also paints this really strange picture of a hidden digital ghost town. A huge chunk of the web being created basically for no one to read.
Yeah, absolutely. And that separation, that gap between the published web and the consumed web,
Yeah.
that brings us to the gray zone,
Ah, yes.
which is arguably an even bigger issue than the purely AI stuff they measured.
Right. Let's talk limitations. The study specifically focused on purely, or at least overwhelmingly, AI-generated content, using that 50% threshold we talked about. It did not evaluate AI-assisted articles, where a human takes an AI first draft and then heavily edits it, rewrites sections, polishes it up.
Where the human is firmly in the loop.
Ex-
And the researchers were really quick to emphasize this point, their professional belief. It's that these AI-generated but human-edited articles might be even more prevalent than the fully AI ones they actually measured.
Really, more common.
Think about it. If you realize pure AI gets filtered out by search engines.
You naturally shift to the assisted model to get that visibility back.
Exactly. This hybrid content is likely the silent majority of the current web publishing ecosystem, and we just can't quantify it easily yet.
It completely changes the definition of authorship, doesn't it?
Really does.
And we also have to mention the detection challenges going forward. While they had that amazing 0.6% false negative rate,
Yeah, which was great.
that was only tested on articles generated by one specific model, GPT-4o.
Right. As the source notes, new models are coming out all the time. They're constantly improving. The output is getting more sophisticated, harder to fingerprint.
So the detection tools have to keep evolving just as fast.
It's genuinely an arms race, detection tools versus generative tools. But, that doesn't negate the core findings about the current state.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize the main takeaway here. The raw web, in terms of sheer volume, is quantitatively dominated by AI now. It's surpassed human output.
Yep, that happened fast, driven by huge economic pressure.
But that quantity is largely invisible in the places we actually look for information, like search platforms.
Right. Probably because that low-value, pure AI stuff just performs poorly and gets filtered out.
So the good news, maybe, is that the internet you consume day to day is likely cleaner, or at least less AI-saturated, than the raw archive suggests.
Exactly. The paradox is that the biggest threat, quantity-wise, is currently being kind of relegated to a digital dump ground, unseen by most.
Okay, and that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to chew on, stemming from that whole gray zone discussion.
The unmeasured part.
Yeah. If the researchers really believe that AI-assisted content, where a human edits or polishes the AI's work, is potentially more prevalent than the purely synthetic stuff.
Which seems plausible.
How do we even begin to measure the true extent of AI's involvement in the majority of content we consume online? Especially if it looks perfectly human, performs well in search, passes all the sniff tests. What stands out to you about this vast, unquantifiable layer of the internet? Something to explore on your own.